Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good to have this session organized, under the Nasscom Insights banner, so to say. Welcome, Reema, Namita, and Yogesh. Let's start with a quick round of introductions. Maybe, Reema, you want to start?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Ram. Thanks for initiating the session and moderating this interesting panel discussion that we have ahead of us. So I'm Reema Aswani, and I take care of AI-related projects at Nasscom Insights. My past experience is also from research, and I'm a PhD in AI and data science. And so AI has been the area of my focus all throughout.
Thank you, Reema. Good to have you here. Yogesh, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Ram. Hi, I'm Yogesh. I'm part of Nihilent, and I'm responsible for global alliances and strategic initiatives around the complementary technologies such as blockchain, IoT, and AI. And I've been really part of some very large data-led transformation programs in last 6 to 7 years, primarily cloud-based. And just to touch upon on Nihilent, I mean, we believe that technology is good only when it lifts the human experience up. And that's what would explain my backdrop as well. And so our core purpose is to bring the human experience to the heart of every technology transformation that we do, be it our interactions in the physical world or the dynamic relationship with the digital realm. So that is us. And thanks, Ram. Over to you.
Thank you, Yogesh. We look forward to having more details about your experience as we go through this session. Welcome. Amita, do you want to talk about yourself?
Sure. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. It's wonderful to be part of this discussion on agriculture and the use of technology in it. My background is associated with technology. Currently, I lead digital transformation research initiatives at Nasscom. Prior to that, I've always been on the consulting side for technology strategy. It's very interesting to see how technology is finally coming out of the corporate offices and being applied everywhere. So very excited to be part of this discussion.
Welcome, Namita. Quick background about myself. I'm Ram. I'm part of an Agritech startup called Intello Labs. We use computer vision and deep learning to assess quality of fresh produce. And we try and address problems like food loss and food waste through the use of technology. So the whole topic of agriculture and digital transformation in this sector is something very close to my heart. I'm really looking forward to this discussion. So with that, let's really jump in. So Reema, let's get started with you. What do you think can AI really do in terms of transforming the agricultural sector? There are lots of use cases which are discussed, and some of which have been explained in a lot of detail in your recent report, the Nasscom report. But which use cases do you think have the maximum potential to create impact?
Sure. So as we all know, the Indian agriculture sector has definitely shown a lot of promising growth. And over the past few years, we've also seen the sector struggle with a lot of challenges. And to address these challenges and actually relieve the sector from its stressful input conditions, I feel technology interventions are a must, specifically AI and IoT, which are definitely the focus area for our discussion today. Having said that, AI definitely has the potential to lead an agricultural revolution, is what I feel, providing us intelligent insights by uniquely combining data that comes from mechanized farm equipments and IoT sensors with the available macro data that we have right now, which is like weather data, satellite data, land use, and other data that's available with us at a macro level. And this will result not only in benefits of AI-led decision making on the agricultural output, but also the entire value chain, the whole pre-harvest and the post-harvest phase. And if I were to highlight some of the AI use cases that can be leveraged to overcome the challenges that the sector faces, it would be precision agriculture and farming, crop quality readiness identification, pest prediction and prevention, and in fact, use cases around livestock management and disease prediction too. So these would be some of the pre-harvest or the harvesting phases. But if we were to also look at the post-harvest phases, it would be intelligent produce grading and sorting, optimizing resource utilization for sustainable farming. There are many other use cases that we can definitely look at. So I would say AI definitely has a huge potential, and combined with IoT, it I think can actually lead to a revolution in the sector.
You're a true optimist. You listed down so many different use cases which you think can, truly create impact. I'm really glad to hear your perspectives. Namita, you've been closely involved with the IoT report. Do you want to add something to what Reema just talked about?
No, I think I completely agree with the perspective that Reema has presented. AI has immense amount of potential. Now let's, couple of points that I would like to add. In India, our agri sector really deals with two major kinds of guessworks, if I may. One is what is the probability of achieving the yield and quality that was anticipated at the time of sowing. And second is the whole market pricing issue, right, based on dynamics, demand and supply. And I think those are two problems at the heart of the whole challenge with both productivity as well as profitability in the sector. And that's where exactly and very squarely that AI sits in. With the massive amount of data that we produce, there's a very good way for us to create massive data sets to which we can apply these AI algorithms and AI engines. I think that's going to be able to transform, as Reema rightly pointed out. And all of those use cases are exactly the places where AI can be applied.
Fantastic. Yogesh, over to you. The latest Nasscom report about IoT application in agriculture talks about how the global adoption is growing really, really massively, whereas the India scenario, according to the report, is we're at a nascent stage. What do you see happening? Where do you see real action happening on the ground?
Well, the potential of the technology is undisputed, and the report very, very clearly also touches upon the 3x growth. And this is what clearly tells the story of IoT adoption globally. It's really, really very encouraging. But when it comes to India, I mean, the report also touches upon that more than 85% farmlands are still less than 3 acres and 50% tenant farming, right? So the viability of really using this technology on small farms and tenant farming is not yet proven. And then there are high input costs, right? So I talk about 3 words basically, and it's hidden into the productivity and the profitability thing that Namita has touched upon. On top of that, awareness, affordability, and ease of deployment. These are going to be the 3 things, if we can really touch upon, would really help expedite the overall thing, right? That said, there is still a lot happening both in the government and private sectors. The report also touches upon some. It talks about how the Karnataka government is looking at various initiatives, including IoT-enabled drip and sprinkler irrigation system. But I'd like to also touch upon something that has come up in last year. We have been involved with Mahindra farming equipment sector. They launched their entire farming as a service initiative, and it actually tries to touch upon, and we could already see some figures in terms of making sure that there is awareness and there is affordability and ease of deployment. So when you talk about awareness, they are actually looking at omni-channel reach to the farmers, right? So they're not only talking about e-channels, but they're also talking about contact centers where farmers can actually physically come until they are very well versed with all these mobile phones, smartphones, and they can look at their data and all that kind of stuff, right? So that is really very encouraging to see. They're also leveraging IoT and AI to bring together the precision farming that Reema really talked about in a very affordable cost. That is something being brought to the table. And as part of the overall initiative, they're also running Krishi rental platform. They have an AI-powered IoT kit in conjunction with some tie-ups that they have done, which can actually track equipments and the work that has been performed, right? And this is really coming up very well. It is very affordable, number one. It is plug and play. So ease of use is there. And we can already see 2,000 plus rental entrepreneurs on that platform, which are using it, right? And on the same lines, there is a startup called Carnot, which is backed up by Mahindra itself, Qualcomm, and so on. And they have some very great solution when it comes to telematics and Krish Dairy, which is already helping. I mean, it's an AI-enabled Agri IoT company. Both are complementary. So we'll keep talking. Even if you're talking IoT, we'll mention AI. They're already helping farmers earn 30% more using their solutions. So there's lots happening, and I'm really hopeful if some of these initiatives can gain more traction in terms of affordability and awareness, we should see a lot of action in coming times.
Awesome, awesome. Great to hear those perspectives. Namita, do you have something to add either from the private sector side, which I think Yogesh has given a lot of details about, or something from the government side?
Sure. I do have perspectives on both the sides, but I just also wanted to touch upon a little bit about what's happening with the whole ecosystem around IoT. Where are we seeing it right now? And this is something that the study highlights, which is there's a massive amount of awareness. It was kind of a revelation when we did the study and found that across the board, all kinds of stakeholders are very well aware about the existence of these technologies, the impact, the potential, the variety that exists. However, the moment you move from awareness to deployment, it drops massively. And that's where what Yogesh mentioned, which is about awareness, about usability. That becomes very, very important. So one is the cost, making the overall cost very, very affordable. And we're not talking just the cost of the sensors, but the solution itself. So I think something that the example, Yogesh, that you took, which is of Mahindra creating almost like a platform solution, is very interesting. These are nascent areas. I know the study highlights the Cisco connected agriculture, but there are various organizations who are driving this. And I think driven by the private sector, as well as with initiatives from the government sector where they ease the regulations, where they actually enable access for the private sector down to these end users, which are the farmers. That is the area, or that kind of ecosystem coming together is what I see is going to take it to a massive scale. As of now, these are pockets, and given the scale at which farming is in India, even these pockets need to be highlighted and brought together in an end-to-end success story, so that we can showcase this is exactly how it can be transformed. We know a lot is happening in pockets per se, but I think all of it needs to be brought together to showcase an example of how smaller things are adding up to becoming a platform approach, and it kind of transforms the whole productivity.
Very interesting. And Namita, do you see 5G and edge technology kind of converge with whatever we already have? Do you think that will kind of launch a new set of products? How do you see the scenario changing?
Yeah, I think I see both of them kind of solving one major issue, which is data transmission speeds and making things real time, available real time. I think that is where the crux of both these technologies along with IoT devices is to be able to enable. So 100x the speed of data transmission, especially when we are talking about images of crops, right, taken by drones or through satellites to assess whether they are getting infested by pest quality, or what is the thermal impression, and what does it tell you about the growth of your yield in one particular field area versus the other, to kind of give you a sense of what's going to be my overall acreage by the time I harvest. All of those things require very, very intense amount of data and also transmission speeds. And I think 5G is squarely positioned to solve for that, make it more real time. As much as is required, right? Not everything is required real time, but it definitely eases that. And I think with edge, the biggest advantage would be, can we have that localized analytics available? So as of now, a lot again breaks down because of connectivity issues or infrastructure issues. I see both of them being able to transform the access to real-time insights or actionable information as the key enabler.
Good stuff. Yogesh, do you want to add anything to whatever Namita said on 5G and edge computing?
Yeah, I think Namita has covered both the key points. When we talk about edge, really it makes a difference that a lot of computing is offloaded onto the edge itself, right? So the IoT management, a lot of intelligent. So we start calling it intelligent edge. So and rightly said by Namita, when we talk about something like image analytics, we're talking about real time taking those images and maybe finding out any specific disease and having more predictive kind of things. That level of kind of data being generated by IoT, the quality of service is not there if the transmission speeds do not match up to that. So of course, absolutely, the more intelligent edge, doing a lot of stuff on the edge itself, and of course the quality of service that 5G will bring in is going to be tremendous. So I would say, I mean, still being looked at in terms of the overall potential, but definitively a lot of new age solutions would come up when 5G really comes to really action.
Interesting. And what about blockchain? I guess that's not been covered at length in either of these reports. But Yogesh, either with the large engagement you were speaking about with Mahindra or otherwise what you have seen in the market, do you see blockchain also kind of getting adoption at a significant pace and scale?
No, absolutely it does. I mean, if you just touch upon blockchain, I'm really happy, and people like me who have been dealing with blockchain. I've been part of blockchain since 2016-17, and that is very early days when you talk about blockchain. And we are very happy that blockchain is now out of the hype cycle. So the real thing is happening really on the ground, and you start seeing a lot of adoption happening. And we have been in thick and thin of multiple things, but I'll just specifically touch upon from the Agri part of it. Specifically, what I've seen is from the provenance and supply chain traceability point of view. And that really comes from the end consumer who potentially is asking, I'm just flipping it over. Ultimately, whatever is being grown and transported and sent is people like you and me who are here having that, right? Is my food safe to consume? Is a question that I'm asking, right? And more and more people like us who starts asking that will really push towards the entire provenance and the traceability piece of it. Though the one big program that we did for a major agri exporter in India a couple of years back, we implemented the entire cycle what we could because the infrastructure still does not exist, was more pushed off by the regulator. There's a whole lot of regulation around any agri being exported to specific countries, and it's very varied. Whether it's like residue level of pesticides or whether I have to subject a particular vegetable to X degree of temperature for 15 days before it reaches shore. It's very, very important because then else there's going to be a lot of wastage in terms of what is being done in terms of grown, what is being harvested and then being exported. So what we did was we did the entire thing around farm to fork model, where certain very key pieces where farmers a contract with an exporter, then there are exporters contracts with the importers. Then there is a lot of other parties like regulators. There are other parties like cargo community system, the entire shipping line, the regulators, the governments who need to be part of it. So blockchain works really well when there are so many distinct parties who are generating a lot of data and they really want to look at it. So the trust is very important. And as well as when I'm looking at whether my food is safe or not, or whether regulator has to really look at all that transparency, then those third-party independent labs and the certificates being generated by them, we are even storing those on the blockchain, right? So that is what we have managed to do. The entire shipping line, we still need to get onto the blockchain network because, as you know, though likes of Merck's and a few others, they've done something around making containers more real-time with IoT devices, but that infrastructure really still needs to be seen. And what we saw were these packaging houses, which are used and the manufacturing hubs for a processed kind of a thing. They still lack both process and infrastructure to track all kind of environmental variables, as I may call it, for the entire cold chain, if I may, is still not existing. So yeah. So blockchain is there, we are able to prove it, but we still there time to really in a mainstream to come.
Yeah, I mean, I could relate a personal experience in this context, not specifically blockchain, but the whole traceability angle. We were working on the grapes supply chain in the recent past, and one thing we realized was, the reports of each farm that they are not using pesticides or the chemical content is, within an acceptable level is something basic to all the grapes exporters. And interestingly, it's almost like at the click of a button, any importer can go to a PEDA managed website and look at the report of what was the latest test done and what was the chemical content. It's kind of ripe for intervention from a blockchain or other such technology intervention perspective, because the base information is there. You may not have kind of sensors all through your transportation, but at least the base information that, hey, the grapes coming from this farm is safe to consume, kind of a thing, that's there. And I'm sure there will be many more use cases out there. That's
absolutely. In fact, what we did was for grapes only, with all punnets of grapes with a QR code that went into that. We were at least able to show the picture of the farmer if he wishes so, the GPS coordinates of the farmland, and the certificates issued by the third party. At least that was something that we were able to achieve.
Phenomenal. Okay, coming back to you, Reema, if I know you spoke about a bunch of use cases which could create a significant impact, but if you were to really pick up one or two, and it could be pre-harvest, it could be post-harvest, but one or two top use cases, what would those be for you?
So I feel if I were to choose from a pre-harvest perspective, I still feel precision farming is an area which still has a lot of potential and would do India a lot of good. Then I feel sowing advisory and farmer digital assistance, because like Yogesh mentioned that information dissemination is also another area wherein farmers do need that awareness. So in India specifically, we still lack that awareness from an information perspective. So at least the Indian farmers. So I feel farmer digital assistant and precision farming would be two areas from a pre-harvest phase. From a post-harvest phase, I feel produce grading is a great use case, and also demand supply matching, because like Yogesh mentioned, there's a lot of wastage that happens. So if we're able to match the demand with the supply that's coming in at the right time, I think that will be of great help.
It's music to my ears as an Intello Labs representative that you think produce grading is going to be a great use case. Thank you so much for that. Namita, do you want to share your thoughts? What would be the top one or two use cases for you?
Sure. I think from a IoT perspective, it would be interesting to see more multi-condition monitors come up. When we did the study, we found that almost 70-75% of the utilization was just the basic sensors. Now imagine putting a sensor which tracks only one input variable, and you have so many of them. So a manufacturing capability that is local to India and makes those monitors, the multi-condition monitors, yield monitors, that are kind of tying the input and output together to give you a one-shot information in a pre-harvest stage. I think that's very interesting, because as of now, you depend on a lot of different things, right? Data from multiple sensors, as Reema had pointed out, match it up with the macro data, combine it all at the back end, push it back to a dashboard or a mobile app. That's a lot happening. Can we combine this data input and analytics right then and there? To me, that would be a very interesting use case, although long-term, yes, but still something that would be very, very useful, would cut down the cost of technology itself. I think in the post-harvest, I would agree with everybody. I think it's about supply chain. It's more interesting, more importantly, about cold chain also, because we are becoming more of a horticulture, dairy, livestock heavy farming sector. Our food grains, still less perishable, still have that basic state level warehousing. We probably are not that great at it, but it's the other part which is where the production is rising as well as the waste. I would really like, some cold chain solutions to come. There are some niche ones, but the big problem with them is the energy requirements. So combining innovation on the energy space, making cold chains mobile, and we do highlight one particular startup who's doing that, Jain, but there are many more who are coming up. And that would be a very, very interesting space to see.
Yeah, in fact, I came across a startup which had like a small cart-sized setup. So they had a huge tarpaulin kind of a sack kind of a system. You keep it on a cart and you close it, and basically it has some kind of solar-driven temperature control system. So it's almost like it's like your ice cream cart, but
Yeah.
it's much larger, and it keeps your fruits and vegetables at a much colder temperature, and it kind of increases the shelf life. I'm rooting for that guy. I hope that takes our service there. Reema, you had mentioned livestock in earlier in terms of the different use cases which could take off. I think in the press and in general, things around crops have been kind of more spoken about, and people are more familiar. If we speak about dairy, like Namita also pointed out, or poultry, or fish and meat, and so on and so forth, what do you see happening? Where are new innovations coming around? Where do you see impact getting created in the short to medium term?
Sure. So, like you mentioned, when we talk about Indian agriculture, there are two key pillars. It's crop and horticulture, and it's non-crop. And if we talk about the GVA that's coming out of crop and horticultural output, about 55% of Agri GVA in 2019 was crop and horticulture, which, like you said, is definitely in the news. We keep talking about use cases, but 45% of the remaining 45% comes from non-crop output, which is livestock, dairy, and aquaculture. So definitely there is tremendous potential. And if we talk about some use cases, the common ones are definitely livestock monitoring, and that can be done in multiple ways. There could be computer vision use cases. There could also be IoT based use cases wherein we could have tags or sensors with the livestock, associated with livestock. There could also be use cases associated with livestock disease management, and AI could definitely play a huge role, like AI powered genetic analysis of the livestock. And if I were to take a few examples, like Aqua Connect, they're doing personalized recommendations for feed usage optimization by analyzing the pond level data. So we did analyze a few of the examples, and they were able to actually cut down the feed cost by 10%. I'm sure there would be many other use cases, and we partnered for this report with EY, and they also were talking about a use case that they were working on, which was AI powered rotary milking parlors to actually improve the milking time and decision making at a central location. So I think there is tremendous potential from a dairy, livestock, and aquaculture perspective. And there are multiple startups, bigger enterprises that are venturing from an AI perspective into this domain.
Yogesh, do you want to add something over there?
Look, from the dairy perspective, yes, I think Reema has covered most of it. But from the dairy perspective, yes. From the other side, I mean, I'm not seeing too many of that happening in India. But when you talk about dairy, the concept of smart cow is definitely there. And Reema did touch upon many of that. And most of it, most probably, is still, some bits of it is still being used in India. I mean, there are Fitbit style necklaces, there's acidity monitoring, there is tail movement monitoring, and there is pedometers, and there are sensors for auto milking, and all that stuff is really there. So the demand of technology is also growing in India, because we see that a lot of these big brands, they're also now first they used to really get those dairy things from farmers, really small farmers. They're setting up their own large farms. So setting up those kind of large farms, these large brands, they really need to use technology. So that demand definitely is there. And as Reema also mentioned, there are startups out there who are doing something like there's a Bangalore-based Stella Apps I was looking at, basically into milk production, milk procurement and all. And there are a few others who are doing some work out there. And I'm sure that will get into more large scale. But specifically, again, I will touch upon, and Namita mentioned previously, on the cold chain, and that's specifically around dairy. In fact, we also have done, we have a product of our own which talks about specifically cold chain monitoring. And again, I'll second Namita on that cold chain thing, that logistic cold chain is something of the need. There are some niche players, but we really need some work to be done out there. we have been speaking to various large players in market from the agri side, dairy side of it, and others, and they do have challenges which still needs to be addressed. And so we all are really looking forward to having some of those platforms really coming out, which also includes the last mile delivery to end consumer like us, right? That also being included in the cold chain, which is I don't see, at least we are not seeing so much so happening. Right?
I think one of the big bang initiatives from government of India has been the large rollout of FBOs. They're building huge market linkages. There is support from the government for initial capex. I think ENAM is trying to reinvent itself. NAFED is looking at something new. IFCO is doing something new. Do you see these initiatives at large scale across the country? Opportunities for tech firms either on the AI side or IoT side to go and plug in their services. Namita, do you want to share your thoughts?
Sure. That's actually a very interesting space, Ram, because couple of data points came up when we were doing this study, and I also heard this in one of the discussions that was lately going on, how less than 5% of the entire farmer population is connected to FBOs or any properly registered FBOs, and that's 95% of the population. And they would have large ones also, which are self-sustaining, obviously. But given how many marginal, small, and kind of semi-medium, anything less than 5 hectares, farmers having that kind of a land holding are there, and India predominantly has that population that presumably is out of the FBO. And what that means is collective planning, collective strategizing is missing. FBOs definitely have that level of perspective, that level of connect. We're talking farm to market, and we've seen certain examples like Ninja Cart, Fresho Carts, etc. Do very, very successfully. But the big thing about very successful farm to market linkages is this grounds up movement and coordination that needs to happen. And that is where squarely I feel FBOs are a critical need. I agree that ENAM and NAFED are doing, but we need to do a lot more on the FBO side. We need to do a lot more on making them capable of the farm to market revolution as aggregators, as well as aggregators not just of the farmers, but the entire marketplace itself.
Yogesh, what are your thoughts? Do you think technology has a role to play with market linkages or improving the functions of FBOs?
No, 100%. I mean, I'm a big advocate when it talks about this Mandi system. This entire thing has to be really technologically upgraded. And I'm pretty happy with, in fact, what government has been also talking about in last many years. Really connecting all these centers has really helped. There's not enough data still out there, but then there has been, enough talks about that how the overall productivity and profitability, in fact, the customer income, how it can be all increased by connecting these all together is something definitely technology has to play a role. And of course, a lot of government support would be required for the same.
So on that note, if you have to ask for something specific, you're a stakeholder in the overall ag and ag tech ecosystem. If you have to ask the government, hey, these are 2 specific steps or inputs or support which is necessary for the system, what would some of those points be?
Look, I mean, one positive thing is there's lots happening, and the Nasscom report really covers the 7-point PM 7-point agenda and the commitment to make the farmers' income double the farmers' income, and then the steps that are being taken, at least on the ground that we see, and the report really captures it very well. And then the initiatives even by the state governments like Karnataka, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, all these are really coming up with a lot of different initiatives for the same. But if you still ask, I mean, maybe the couple of things that if I can think of is, of course, number one, I touched upon it earlier. I think some large scale awareness programs in terms of, I'll also include what Namita mentioned, whatever may be happening in pockets. So the real good success stories, right, that are happening out there through which farmers are able to really see the value and improve their productivity and profitability. So there's a large scale awareness program that would be required. It has to be multi-channel through various government channels, as well as maybe private sector can contribute to it. So something definitely required that will help with adoption. And then from the affordability perspective, I think Namita touched upon regulation side of it. I'll also talk about maybe a lot of local production of this sensor technologies, a lot of subsidiaries if they can come from government for various startups who can really look into it, can definitely improve affordability. So these 2 points from adoption and affordability perspective, I think government can help.
Reema, what are your thoughts? Do you have something to add over there?
Yeah, no, I think I completely agree with what Yogesh mentioned. The agri sector in India is it's largely dependent on direct and indirect government financial assistance. And government is actually doing a lot of things like promoting mechanization and adoption of new technologies. It's playing a crucial role in disseminating information to the farmers, like Yogesh mentioned, but there has to be a lot more scale to it. And they're also providing necessary support, mentorship in the form of government incubators and accelerators, IP commercialization. They're doing those things in bits and pieces. And like Yogesh and Namita both mentioned, there has to be scale and there has to be a common platform where all of these things can be done. And government entities are in fact partnering with technology companies to bring together use cases that the farmers can use. There's one thing that I would like to highlight from an AI perspective, wherein data, which is critical for AI applications, and that is both macro and farm level data. So I feel government can play a crucial role in actually aggregating that data. Getting access to clean data from an AI perspective is the key, because the sector is so fragmented and there are things happening in bits and pockets, and different governments like Telangana, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, they're doing few use cases, few things in pieces, but a common data platform wherein agri-specific data, at least at the macro level, can be made available, and that is across the value chain, not just post-harvest or pre-harvest, but I think data is an area where government intervention would be of key role.
Very interesting stuff. Let me share my kind of experience as well when it comes to awareness, which both of you kind of spoke about. So I've spoken to at least 2 or 3 consulting firms who have been engaged by the government because they've realized that while they have good programs, but it's a challenge for either it's a huge challenge for farmers, even for FBOs, to be able to take advantage of the programs is a big challenge. So these consulting firms are actually doing the scouting to figure out, which FPOs or farmers in which location can benefit with XYZ policy. And then they're bringing the government and these organizations together. It's, looking at the scale which we have in India, so it's quite a maddening exercise to be able to reach out to all the potential beneficiaries out there. And yeah, as much as the government is trying, I'm sure there is scope to do more. Reema, you mentioned incubators, accelerators, and again with Intello Labs hat, I can frankly say that to put it mildly, our experience with accelerators has been a mixed bag. I'm putting it very, very mildly, so to say. But really, do you see some good organizations out there who are truly adding value to the startups, who are truly, helping them grow, making a difference in the market?
No, definitely. So Nasscom does incubator accelerator report almost every year, and the 2020 incubator accelerator report highlights that high majority of programs are sector or theme agnostic, and there is a clear preference for the accelerator model. And agri, however, does feature amongst the top 8 sectors, which is a focus, but it is the 8th one. So definitely there's not much that's happening from an agri perspective, but I do see a couple of good examples, good accelerators like AIDEA, the Association for Innovation Development of Entrepreneurship in Agriculture. That is a good accelerator that is a technology business incubator, which is hosted by, I think, ICAR and NAM, Hyderabad, and it's supported by a lot of government bodies, and Government of India is actually supporting it. Another one is the CIE at IIIT Hyderabad and National Institute of Agricultural Extension Management, the MANAGE, that is also doing a lot of great work in the agri space. So apart from the common ones that are catering to all the sectors, I feel these two are the good ones, at least, which have good government backing from a startup perspective. So I think those are the
good stuff. Yogesh, have you come across any good accelerators?
Well, I think for a what you said, it has been a mixed bag for you. But what I was reading was you're one of the 5 top agri startups to really watch for in 2021. So that means it's working, really. So, but yeah, there are a lot of incubators out there. I think Reema covered a few of them already. Manage and all are really doing good job. There's a Will Grow out there. There is Indian Agriculture Research Institute out there. But I believe what I have seen of, I have not had very close encounter with these, but what I think what works, and I've seen that in few other industries. If these incubators really need to work, the industry experts who have really spent real time, last many years in this sector and in technology, who really understands this, are the guys who need to really come together and form this, right? That is going to help. If it is going to be in general and they are looking at startups as a startup and not as an agri-tech startup, then I don't think it's going to really work as it should, because the real experience, it's not about just that the funding that is being made available by them, but it's also about the experience that those guys really bring to the table. That's how I see it.
Yeah, we couldn't agree more. So, the startups where with the accelerators where we got a lot of value was when there was an organization which was, helping us in piloting our technology in a real use case scenario, so to say. That's when, the rubber meets the road, and that's the experience, and, that's the help which really takes you forward and, kind of takes the company forward. So the more the organizations can structure it around, here is how we will test the product market fit or help you run a pilot. I think that's where it adds true value. All right. We just almost running out of time, but I think we have time for one more question. This is for the ladies from Nasscom. There was a mention of Netherlands as a phenomenal example in the recent report on AI Agritech. So from an India perspective, what are the lessons for us? What should tech companies do? What should agri businesses do? What can the government do? What can we learn from Netherlands, really?
I think I'll start. So Netherlands has definitely been a great case study that we did go through while preparing our report. And they've especially inspired us from achieving a sustainable agriculture ecosystem. Although their arable land is small, but they've been pioneers in the agriculture space. And if I were to draw a few conclusions or a few lessons from what they did, I would say the right stakeholder engagement is a must. That is where I think India needs to work. And that, so different entities from the agricultural space can come together to create a holistic ecosystem. For example, like I mentioned earlier as well, data is something where government could play a key role in getting the data right. Then the technology companies, the product companies can get the infrastructure piece in place on top of the data. And then the startups and the technology service providers can bring about innovative applications that cut across the value chain. So I think this stacked approach could definitely help India and the whole data infrastructure and the application bit. And there is something for everybody to do, and they can actually plug in wherever they have wherever the respective entities have their expertise. So I think the right stakeholder engagement, definitely spending on R&D and government initiatives that focus on mechanization and promotion of farm specialization and awareness. So I think that is another key area where we need to actually get to pace, and that is what Netherlands actually did. They focused on future farming. They focused on getting the ecosystem right, getting the right stakeholders together.
Great. Namita, do you want to add something?
No, I think that was absolutely bang on. I think Reema covered everything. In fact, if when we look back to how Netherlands started, I think they and that's let's give them the benefit of doubt, right? Netherlands is what 14, 16 million. That's like a city in India, right? Like Delhi or Mumbai in India. So they are definitely small, but probably in the top 20 when it comes to population density. So they definitely knew that while they had the strength or capability to produce, they had to do less with land, with lesser land. So I think they spent a disproportionate amount of time strategizing what is the focus going to be for agriculture? What do they want to achieve? Is it about domestic consumption? Is it about being an export-oriented country? What is it about? And I think they got that one metric right. When we were studying this, it was interesting that their square focus was yield per hectare. And I think we have that focus. We are talking about farmer income, right? Yield per hectare. India is very, very large, but if we have to just pick up something very interesting from their model, that is what one focus area, what one metric, what one success measure do we drive towards? And that is farmer income for us. For them, it was yield per hectare. So they did everything that they could possibly to get that metric right. Whether it was technology focus, using precision farming, using greenhouse horticulture, using very, very diversified set of crops. They are probably one of the topmost exporters of Agritech. But after that, they are also the topmost exporters of non-food crops, which is ornamental flowers, plants, vegetables, exotic fruits, etc. And then dairy, etc. So all the high margin stuff along with the food grains, right? So they got that diversification right. And I think technology helped a lot. And then the whole cost minimization part. So, I'm setting up a greenhouse horticulture setup. What are the costs of it? Because now it's no longer open air, it's closed, it takes a lot more energy. So how do those costs get offset by the ultimate profitability that comes in? I think those things were very interesting in the Netherlands model, and different countries had different models. But from a Netherlands perspective, the one thing that I really liked was their square focus on getting one measure right and deciding what that measure is going to be.
Phenomenal, phenomenal. Thanks so much for sharing that perspective. I think, we have a lot of good thoughts coming from this discussion. There are a plethora of use cases, both in the pre-harvest and the post-harvest, which could create significant impact. Some of it is already out there, creating scale. Some of them are at an initial pilot stage, but the scope and the potential is definitely kind of humongous. And some great thoughts on, what the government can do. And obviously there is a lot of support available from an accelerator ecosystem perspective as well. I think overall, I'm kind of, there is a reassurance, and I'm kind of really excited to be part of this Agritech ecosystem. Thank you so much for all your inputs. This was a great session. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.